Hafa day, everybody. Welcome back to the Dream State Podcast. We're on episode 3. Thank God you guys are enjoying episode 2 with Peter Cruz. We're back for another one this week with a really special guest.
We have a super special guest for episode 3. So throughout Guam's music scene, he is known as a local legend with the kindest soul. He is an iconic jazz pianist that has paved the way for generations of creatives here on Guam. And he is everyone's favorite uncle.
He's everyone's favorite uncle and your uncle's favorite uncle, Patrick Palomo, everybody. Woo!
Thanks.
Yes.
Looking good, looking fresh. Oh, you're so kind.
If I hug Kiku, I'm going to have to hug you.
Yeah, true that. True that.
Yep.
So, Uncle Pat, how are you feeling today? Thank you so much for joining us here.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of like in a surreal mode because earlier I had to talk to the cancer survivors for American Cancer Society about my healing journey,
Yeah.
being a survivor myself. So I think that kind of warmed me up a little for this.
Yeah, you've been talking all morning, huh?
You're the best person to talk for that. You're an inspiration for all of them. You're an inspiration for the younger generation, for everybody. Cancer survivors or even like loved ones of cancer survivors, you know?
Yes.
Yep. So how about we first met Uncle Pat through our involvement with the Phoenix Stage Band. Let's talk about that.
Had to be as far back as maybe 2014 or something, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I never count.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's 10 years ago.
Wow, that
Wow.
time just sure flies, you know. I just feel like when you really immerse yourself into music, there's a timeless nature to it. So, I just kind of like put it right there.
Yeah.
It's like your music. It's timeless. It's timeless.
So once again, thank you, Uncle Pat, for joining us here today. So maybe
My
to start us off, let's start back from the beginning. Let's talk about the beginning of music in your life. Do you remember probably like the earliest experience you've had with music?
Oh, yes, very much, because I grew up in a home where I was blessed to have certain, my dad loved to listen to jazz records. So that's why I felt very lucky. He had these old Verve albums that he would play. And I also lived with my aunt who raised all of us, and she started me first just playing the piano. I remember I was probably as young as 3-4 years old when I had this love affair with the piano.
Yeah.
And then, of course, my mom being a school teacher and just teaching all these songs, and so my aunt being a tetsa. So I was exposed to that element, and it has a lot to do with our culture and the beautiful Nobena songs and stuff that we still have,
For sure.
Did your dad play piano as well? Was he a
He
musical?
played some piano, man. I used to try and kind of mimic him, but he played guitar. Kiko, my dad would get up every morning before everyone, probably right after I went to sleep because I've stayed up all night practicing, and he'll spend a couple of hours going through stuff, chords and scales just in the guitar.
Oh. I think I need to do that, man.
So how about, did you start playing music like at family parties or did it start at church?
To be honest with you, I was kind of that closet musician for a while because I was very shy. And so as much as I was sitting at the piano, staying up late at night, waiting till everybody slept, I wanted no one to hear me. I'd close the bedroom doors and play as lightly as possible. And, that kind of helped me develop something as far as playing pianissimo. It's one of the most difficult technical things to do it smoothly. And so I started working on that dynamic level and, so that when I started playing other stuff, it expanded from there. But I was shy. It took my first cousin, who unfortunately passed away. He drowned over at where Fisheye is right before our senior year. And at that time, I just quit the seminary. I was going to FD. And it was my junior year, and they asked me to come to JFK because they had a stage band. And little by little, I was able to open up. And my cousin has a lot to do with it. We had a band in Piti called Sounds and Company.
Sounds and Company.
And he knew that I was playing piano, but he literally had to come and just pull me out of my shell and say, hey, we can do this, and I was really shy. Even when I was younger and playing the downbeats, my brother used to scold me because it's kind of like I always thought I was too loud. So I go, I'll be playing, all of a sudden I hear somebody turning up my volume.
What did your cousin play?
He sang and played bass.
Oh, wow.
And we had this group of guys my age from Piti, that's the beginning of that group. Me starting to learn about playing with musicians in a band, and then discovering that kind of magical thing when you're, when everybody's getting to the music, it becomes real magic. And I've always been cognizant of that, and I always wanted to do it for the rest of my life, really.
So you say you started as a closet musician.
Yes.
Do you remember your first experience playing for like a crowd or for even maybe family and friends or any kind of audience?
Yeah, our band, Sounds and Company, we were hired to do this thing at, the mayor, Piti, Jesse Alec, had an apartment building across 76 that belonged to his family. I didn't even think Jesse was born yet. But his grandmother and my grandmother are sisters. So his family used to have big parties. And on top of that 3-story apartment, there's an upper level with just like a fencing around it. If you ever pass Piti, you can look.
Open air.
And so, yes. And so our band was playing there for the first time. Of course, I still get really nervous to this day, performing in whatever capacity, but that's when I remember. And the first gig, and I always just accepted that I'm always going to be nervous about what I'm doing. And then, I had to realize that that's just the nature of wanting to, live every note and be the best that you could be. You're always going to have some kind of nervousness because of the high bar that you put for yourself, kind of thing.
So what kind of music did Sound and Company play? Because I know you said that you listened to jazz with your father.
Yes,
we know
but
jazz is not for everyone.
Yeah, no, it wasn't jazz, that's for sure. The music at the time, I remember we did that Never Can Say Goodbye by Michael Jackson.
Ooh.
And I still love that song to this day.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. There was, by the time I get to Phoenix, I think it was Glenn Campbell. That was our kind of repertoire. And then I'm trying to remember some of the other stuff. It wasn't jazz.
Yeah.
But it was stuff that was easy to learn because of just having just 3-4 chords, And just like everyone else, I started in a band by learning to play triads. And then it was later on when I started getting more into the music and listening very intently that I was able to build on that, and become more progressive in my approach to playing keyboard and piano.
What was the music scene like back then?
Man, seems to be a lot more bands then,
Yeah. Oh, really?
There was this band from Asa, and I can't remember their name, but it was, Nina Terlahi, right? It was the Terlahi Boys, and they were like family bands. And then there were other bands around at the time. There was an old girls band, the Paris Sisters, called Venus.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean,
Also, it's very like family oriented.
Yes, but, music had always been something. Just going way back, pre-war days, they had big bands coming to play for the military. So, musicians that have become renowned had possibly passed through Guam just doing these touring gigs. And then a lot of the CHamoros that went into the military got into playing music too. I think, if I can recall, my grandfather from the Palomo side was in the Navy. And he played trumpet, I think. And so there was all these things that had always stayed with the islanders locally because I think we just have a creative inclination and natural thing about, connecting with music. And no matter what it is, we can say this style or that, but really you both know, and you guys are playing at a super high level.
Thank you.
Music is universal, so... That's the kind of influence. I might be all over the place, but
no, please.
No,
you're asking me questions, and then my memory is getting.
No, we love it. We love it.
That's what we
love
want
it
for sure.
Yeah. So maybe you started off with Sounds and Company, and then what was the move after that?
Wow, I have to really think hard. I remember playing with my brother's band called the Downbeats. At that time, he was playing guitar, and Luis Borja's dad was playing bass. Dave, he had a gorgeous voice. One of the things that made me want to go play with them is just to listen to him sing. And then I started hanging out with the likes of my classmates opening up a little more. And then Tommy Beato, we had this group called Never Mind the Name, and it was the concept of 2 keyboards, which really no one was hearing about that, but we just wanted to do something so that we could play music together. He would play organ, I would play Fender Rhodes. And so there was this group, and I think I remember us playing at some event. We practiced progressive songs for that time. And they asked, what's the band's name? And it became Never Mind the Name. That was the answer, and that was the name of the group.
Yeah, trying to figure out a band name is really hard.
At that time, when you were playing with like that group, did you already know that you wanted to like actually get into the jazz, like into playing jazz?
There was always a love for jazz because of just not only listening to it, but just realizing the elements of the harmonic structure. And I was very much attracted to that. I mean, it was huge in me. I didn't say much about it, but it was really going on inside of my mind and, wanting to figure this thing out and that. And then I started taking lessons from a piano player locally. His name is Vic Paris. I don't want to mix him up with Vic Harris. You guys are so young. But these are, names of musicians. I even went to Guam Academy of Music, too, as a child.
Oh, wow. I
didn't
know we
like
had
my lessons there because the teacher was mean and they wanted me to play classical. I was, the books that the kids are learning classical.
Yeah.
She'd play the piece and then leave the room and tell me to practice. And I was too lazy to read. So what I do is whenever she played it, I'd just learn it by ear and then play it back for her.
Oh my
so
gosh.
there went my ability to be a good reader, sight read. But then at that time, I was really developing that instinctive part that everybody has, and now they're discovering through studies that there's a part in the brain and it's like how you guys play. You tap into that, and then all these things are possible musically and even technically. All you got to do is just put your effort into it.
And feel. Yeah.
Yes. So I was doing that, and then I was talking about playing the band, and there's just so much. I immersed myself as much as I could. The JFK stage band.
Yeah, can we talk about that? I never knew you were in a stage band too.
Yes, what lured me out of Father Duenas was Tony Sgro was a good friend of mine because we were classmates at Cathedral since first grade.
Yeah.
And he called me up and said, hey, I heard you're not in the seminary anymore. We need a keyboard player for our band. We're going to be eventually making trips to Japan.
Oh, wow.
And of course, it was hard for me to say no. So I went there, and what did I do? I skipped all my classes at JFK, stayed in the band room practicing all day. And not to mention the other things that I was doing because the influence at that time. So these are all, man, I might be all over the place, but I really, when I think back, and you guys ask me these questions, all of these memories come to mind because I really lived, and it was all about the music, realizing that that's really what I wanted to do. Even writing. I've been writing since I was young. I was trying to make up patterns in the piano. And some of the songs, I always felt mamalo about it. This is too, nerdy or too silly. I don't want to let anybody hear it, but I've always kept it. And then now I'm starting to realize that it could be relevant even in today's music. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Most people will know, and if you don't know, your parents will know or your grandparents will know, you were part of a band called The Casuals.
Oh,
and
yeah.
you guys had eventually, right, you played here. Can you tell us about getting together with The Casuals before talking about leaving Guam?
Yes, see, it's so funny because now I'm realizing that I went through all this process of different groups, then came The Casuals. And it was my pari and Justin Baez. He was my primo. And knowing that he was going to sing really was one of the things that made me decide to join the group. They were working on putting together a band to go to Hawaii. But even before that, the original Casuals I played with had Uncle Tope, Trey Cunningham's dad. A guy by the name of Monte Platavega, a master musician, guitarist. I would always try and, pick his brain for harmony and 4-part and jazz. And he'd go, why do you want to play jazz? You're never going to make money. And I always knew that I'm not getting into music for the money. If things happen, good. But it's for the other more, higher things about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's the first casuals of Monte, Frank Mendiola, Danny Paris. These guys are still around. Unfortunately, the drummer then, Bobby Ligo, he's a Filipino guy. He was a very soulful guy, could play drums, was right in the pocket and sing. And he unfortunately passed away. I was able to spend some time with him in San Francisco when I was there in the 90s recording. And we found each other, and so that was the original Casuals. Then it morphed into the other one that got really popular and had all these hit songs in Hawaii, songs about love, Ebony Eyes. That's the one with Jesse Bias and Frank and Danny. Zachary Flores, the other keyboard player. What an artist of a musician that guy was. It's just that, we were able to be able to complement each other. I'd usually play the piano and the percussive parts, and he'd do the strings and the horn things. And we were using a lot of vocals to compensate for not having a horn section. Yet what catapulted us when we went to Hawaii is we went there, we learned the whole Way of the World album by Earth, Wind & Fire. So we were playing all that stuff. Not even the bands in town when we got there were playing that song. And then the musicians were telling me, man, those songs are too hard, But what happened is we put a lot of practice time. And I have to say, that's where I developed a sense and knew that on that instinctive part of, being able to learn something by ear. And then I was the musical arranger, so I kind of have to spell out everybody's note just so that we don't be there for days, trying to learn something. But I had a natural ability, and I embraced that.
If you can recall, what year was that you guys had made that move to Hawaii?
Early 70s, 73 perhaps, because I already graduated. But there was this group called Cattail that I was in, Stoners. Cattail is, at that time, is the Thai stick. And this weed is to this day, this one's so powerful, you get hallucinations. Then I find out later on that
not weed.
Yeah, this weed is cured with opium.
Oh, my goodness.
That's why.
Oh my
and
God.
I happen to be around, I don't know where this podcast is going to go, but
That's fine.
the people bringing it in at the time, they're kind of like a mafia thing. And my relatives from Piti, everyone worked for Pan Am. Somebody was the ramp supervisor. And I remember my uncle used to show off, he got in trouble for tax evasion. People, if they're listening and remember, he was famous. The problem, he was so smart, he knew how to make money. He'd come and just give me a couple of bricks, which is 20 Thai sticks. Okay. He goes, hey boy, go sell this and maybe you can buy yourself a keyboard. No, I smoke it with all my friends.
That goes to show.
But that helped kind of get your creative thing because, you don't have anything holding you back.
Yeah, you're not in your head.
Yeah, and it goes to show that you went through that kind of environment. We don't, thank God, we don't have to navigate through drug deals and
oh my God, it was
opium laced marijuana to be a musician and to get the funds to buy a keyboard. And you got through all of that, and here you are, a local legend. Later
that's
on.
why I tell all these kids like you guys. I don't want to say kids, but learn from what I went through. I'll tell you my stories, and then know that you don't want to do that or do this. And I feel that that's my way of contributing back. I'm so enamored by the talent that's around. And, I finally realized that even after the Casuals and I came back, I played with a group called Pacific Transfer that had the likes of Lingo Borja, Linda Guerrero, Tony Beato, my brother, Joe, and even Joylene Suba. Then when Dave Santos, he and I used to hang out all the time. We had a group called Blue Fire. That's why when you hear about GPD's Blue Fire, that's where got that name. He was like, should I say this in the podcast? He was so in love with he was like a groupie following the band.
Ooh,
the down low. It's okay. If anything, we can cut it later, but it's fine. Let it go. Because let it go. We edit it after.
I'm talking all in a good way because, And so, yeah, I know I'm kind of like all over the place, but you guys are asking me questions all of a sudden these things. I say, I can't believe I'm that old. Because when you immerse yourself into your music, it becomes timeless, you know? Like, look at how I'm able to play with you guys and perform.
Exactly.
Because of that's what music can do. It helps people transcend barriers, even age limit. You know, when I'm performing with somebody, I don't think about those things. I just think about how we're going to live through this music together kind of thing.
Yeah, beautiful.
For sure. There are no barriers. Age doesn't matter in music. Race doesn't matter. Class doesn't matter.
And that was a big thing that I learned from you is openness, being willing to be open to play with anyone and everyone.
Yes, that's music is really the key to world peace. It's real magic, and I'm trying to teach that at school. Unfortunately, they took me out of teaching music, but I'm still using music to teach conversational CHamoru to these 1st and 5th graders.
Wow.
By writing cantan chamarita pieces so that they could have fun, you know.
And it's how full circle is it that we met you at the school you're teaching at now, which is Mount Carmel. We were students. We were just barely, learning how to play with a group.
And you guys were so good, though.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I super look forward to going to those afternoons and kind of, tutoring and coaching you guys, not only the keyboard section, but I love when we were able to get together. And I always noticed that quality in you. And you, Kiko, there was just something special about you, and I already noticed it since then,
Thank you.
That's why I was totally in support of you guys doing what you do now. I know that it was hard because back then the thinking with bands sometimes is that you're being unfaithful to a group if you just don't stick to the same people. But I've always been keen and recognized the involvement of music. And you have to go with things, and nowadays people become so good that they could play, they could stretch out and still do their magic that way,
Yeah. It has to be all over the spectrum, right? It can't just be,
Yes.
It can't just, how do I say this without, yes, it's nice to have focus in one place, but it's also nice to grow by stretching yourself and by playing with many different people, like we talked about. Explore why we say that music doesn't just, it transcends class, race, age, all of that. Organization, structure, all of it. It goes out the window when it comes to music. Yes. And I feel like you really helped teach us that growing up.
Well, you're going to have your own, progression and stuff, and it's just beautiful to watch, honestly. I'm kind of like more of just like a cheerleader now. But, I mentioned this to someone today because, it kind of concerns me when I read about the businesses here, and they're worried that the tourism is not really flourishing here like it used to. I just wish that sometimes the powers that be can tap into the creative spirit that we have here, because it's very powerful.
It's so powerful.
In every way, musically, art, the way guys do things. Look at this place, man. I'm amazed. And, it's like, I just feel that there's something about where we come from here. I'm kind of superstitious, a little odd, but hey, I always talk about, we're near the deepest part of the ocean, near the Marianas Trench. I feel like we're drawing energy from that, and it's feeding into our artistic inclinations, kind of thing.
Yep. I agree. Because even the first time, so just last year, I think it was 2023, like September 2023, when we went to the States, or that was the first time I went to the States. That was my first time playing in like Las Vegas, San Francisco, where else? Seattle, and all those places. And I've only played here on Guam. So I know what our people is like, what the energy is like. And I really got to grow my love and appreciation of where we're from after going to the States and playing for those crowds and playing in that environment, because where we're from, it's so special. And I do agree that we pick up energy from our land and where we're from.
Oh, yes, totally. I think, with the likes of you guys, look at you, you're playing with Maoli. You know what? They're finally now realizing that musicians, artists from Guam are, what's the word? I don't know, maybe I'm dated already, but I like to speak badass or whatever,
Period.
They're gaining that reputation of being very And it's a highly respectable image to have.
Yep. And there's a bunch
I've
of us.
always known
There's
that.
proof.
Yes.
There's a bunch of us. There's all kinds of guys playing for all kinds of acts out in the States, ladies too. But just our friend Peter, who was here last week, playing with Kaloe Kai, Cam,
Nate Taituno
with Fia,
yeah.
another really amazing artist. Freddie out there in Florida for
Yes.
4-piece band. All
There's
kinds
just so
of
many.
Yep,
so many names.
Shabi, we'll have him on soon, Shabi.
Yeah. So I talked about playing in like Seattle and San Fran. I actually want to go back to how did you and the Casuals end up going to Hawaii?
Well, this is okay. Let's just because I was kind of like went through there and it was kind of hazy. But once we got this other group together that evolved into the one I mentioned with Jesse Bias, and we learned, we were learning a lot of songs. And then Frank Mendiola at the time, he had saved up enough money to say, hey, can we take this group to Hawaii and see what we can do, And everyone had the desire and the dream to go out there and play as a band. And I don't know, maybe some people are making it, I guess. I never think in those terms. I just want to be in the moment and just make sure that what I'm doing is going to be at its optimum and best, because those things can get you places without you having to spend energy worrying about it,
Yeah.
But yes, so we got together, and it's a funny thing because, man, I can tell this story. My mom was kind of hesitant about letting me go because she thought I should stay back and play with Jimmy D because he approached my parents. And he recognized that I had something going, and he wanted me to play in his group, and he was putting together this show. And I met the guy, and, in all due respect to Jimmy D, he didn't represent, the kind of music and the kind of energy that I felt natural and, that fire burning in me to do. But with the Casuals, man, we were playing Earth, Wind, and Fire songs.
How old were you at that time when you were offered that gig? And
I was like, what, 18, 19?
Wow. That's very mature of you.
Out of high school.
And he was a big name at the time, correct?
Yes, and so when my mom told me that this is what you should do, or maybe you should just go to school, and that had always been in the back of my mind, because some of my mentors, like Carlos Laguardia,
One of my mentors.
He went to Berkeley, and he came back and told me, say, hey, you should go to school over there. You do well there. And what I did is I took a correspondence course from there with the thought of maybe perhaps finally going there eventually. But then I just got too immersed in playing with the Casuals, and, and there was kind of like my school as far as experiencing all of this, and especially having a hand in being a musical arranger and trying to come up with stuff to make us have our own sound. Because we really did. We used a lot of vocals, a lot of rehearsals. I was mean. I would conduct the rehearsals and then go for 6 hours.
Sometimes that's what it takes to be a really good MD.
Yes,
and in Phoenix Stage Band, Kiko was mean. And you saw that. You saw that. He was mean too. You guys can relate on that.
Hey, the girls complained to me. And I said, the guy just wants to do well, and, you're just going to finally realize that.
Yeah. Knowing both of you can relate being a MD, a musical director, how do you guys balance, like when we're playing live, how do you balance being in the moment, but also making sure that your band and everyone is on the same page and following all the correct chords and arrangements? How do you guys balance that?
Let me go first on this one. I've learned over the years that morale and friendship, I'd say, because all the bands I play with, we're all friends. I'm not in any group that it's just there for the money or just there for business, or even like everyone is friends. With Mo'oli, with KPV and the homies, with any act I produce here on Guam, I make sure we're friends first. And with Mo'oli, we ended up being friends. Everyone is just tight. So when we're in rehearsals, I'm not the MD for that group, noted, but I see how that works, and I see how I'm the MD for our group here. And it's like when everyone is kind of just, if you can make it feel like we're friends and we're having a good time, we're just at a hangout, but with a purpose, like the purpose is to sound better, to make great arrangements, or to just tighten up what we already know. Things just work. Things just go faster. And then having a proper leader, like knowing if this guy says, that he has the final say, and we'll sound better, trusting that we know he has the final say, and will be in
Or
the right
she.
direction. He or she has the final say, and will be in the right direction. And even if it may not be the right direction, at least we're going in the same direction, and that ends up being the right one.
Yeah.
You know.
How about you, Uncle Pat?
How about you? Uncle
I
Pat?
pretty much have a very similar take. And at the same time, you know, you mentioned the word trust, see? And that's so important that you especially trust what you're hearing. And just by being the musical arranger and stuff, putting all these things together, I'm making sure I listen to every detail of the music. And when you start doing that, you actually develop yourself as an artist because you're learning to hear all these things. And there's just some part of our brains that's able to expand on this, and then it makes you become a better musician as a whole too, in the way you express yourself. And I like to just always talk about, you know, living each note you play, because that's so important for me. I mean, there's other jobs that could probably make more money, but it's never really about the money for me. It's just because what you get from the music becomes, it's more value, it's priceless. You cannot, you know. And, you know, I have to mention other things too, like the other groups. I mean, I was so involved in so many bands. There's a group called Fried Bananas. That was one of the most promising groups that I played with. I mean, everyone there had a really nice, you know, approach, talent, passion, and were really good at what they did, you know? Yeah. That's where I come in and sometimes wish that these things were recognized by people so that we could have flourished better, you know, as a group. But now it's starting to happen with your generation, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. I actually want to go, I keep bringing up casuals, but I remember, I think we need to find those pictures, but I saw photos of you guys all wearing like the same outfits.
It was all white.
Yeah,
all white.
same. Let's talk
with
about
the platform.
Yep. Let's talk
Bring up the
about
pic first. Bring up the pic.
bring up
Here
the
it is.
picture. And let's talk about like you guys' approach on fashion and putting on a show for the casuals.
That was a real 70s thing. You know, believe it or not, the guy that was designing all our band uniforms was this African-American guy. You wouldn't think he's a fashion designer because he also made all the outfits and sewed it himself.
Wow.
And he just had this artistic look. And, you know, we kind of like looked like the other, you know, what's the right word I should use? The other bands where there's a lot like Earth, Wind & Fire and this other group called Freshwood that became pretty big in Hawaii. He also did their uniforms. They were all black guys, African-American guys. And I remember when it was kind of like trendy to have an afro, you know. I always avail myself to artistic friends. And they say, hey, man, can we do this? And I say, oh, okay, go ahead. And then I had a fro this big. And I remember meeting these guys at the gig, and a couple of them, I took it as a huge compliment. He goes, I swear to God, you're a brother. They actually thought I was,
Yeah, that is a
you
compliment.
know, I was one of the light-skinned, you know, guys. So, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, when we first saw, you know, black artists in Hawaii, man, I mean, wow.
Wow. Was it like a hassle trying to get everyone to wear the same outfit? Was there any band member that was like, nah,
Mike
I'm not
Diamore.
into it? That makes so much sense.
He wanted to quit
Shout out
the
to Mike
band.
Diamore.
And he and I were very close. We always roomed together, and he was always, come on, Pat, we gotta stop doing this shit, man. Because let's just go to Berkeley. He was ready to go to school. My parents were ready to send me too.
I can imagine him saying that with a glass of wine in his hand.
Yes.
Come on, Pat, let's go.
No,
Let's
because
go.
he hated to do even the choreography thing.
Choreography
our
too?
manager, yeah, she hired this lady who was actually from Hawaii, but she was in the cast of A Chorus Line. She's a short Hawaiian Chinese girl by the name of Alani. Her and I got really close. And we went to watch her show, and then she ended up staying in Hawaii. She had a little break after that. And I swear to God, you know, when in the first part of the show, when everyone does their leap,
Yeah.
she was the shortest one. She leapt higher than anybody. Splits in the air. Wow. She eventually even toured with our band when we first did the first concert at the Fieldhouse. And then Budweiser sponsored us to go to Palau.
Oh, wow.
She was my roommate because I was the one that could be trusted to be roommates of anybody. And I became close with her. She introduced me into the artistic scene of dance. And God, man, as hard as they work. And she was she was a dancer in LA. In fact, she used to do Michael Jackson's group dance class, where they do all these exercises and various movements in order for the choreographer to come in and do, because she was like, she could do those one-handed push-ups. She was buff, short, but very strong. So
she would like vet
powerful.
The dancers before the choreographer came in, kind of?
No, she'd actually work them out.
So she was a trainer,
trainer, yeah,
conditioner.
Oh.
Wow.
The Jacksons, Michael Jackson and his brothers, and
wow.
Yes, this was, she was telling me these stories. I go, whoa, no wonder why she was so well respected. So when I hung out with her in LA, she introduced me to all her dancer friends, and then took me to some of those shows, and one in particular that she did a solo thing on her own, and I just saw that world, and I feel that was a huge blessing for me, to open myself up to find out how people performed, even in that level in Hollywood and in Broadway and musicals. They work their butts off, man. Mm-hmm. And it just shows that with anything, if you put your time and effort into it, the possibilities are endless.
Mm-hmm. Back to, like you say, opening yourself up. What was it like when you first, with the Casuals, when you guys first decided, okay, we have a manager, and back to trust as well. We're gonna trust her with these decisions, and these decisions she's gonna make for us. We're not even making them. You're hiring a stylist / seamstress and a choreographer. And what was that like? All of you Guam boys going from, playing here at home to being in a proper. I'm not gonna say corporation but just an organized, it's a business, and you have leadership, and there's a ladder that you have to climb to be able to make those says, and the manager's on top. What was it like, transitioning into listening to her?
Yes, there was a lot of, Frank Mendiola was our band leader, and he had his job. I didn't envy his job, because he had to keep everybody whole on the same frame of mind and wanting to do this. So he took a lot of coaxing and talking to me, hey, this is not really matapa, we got to do this. The agent that hired us to play in these different venues in Hawaii, and then eventually we did a tour in the mainland, California, Texas, Washington State. At that time, there was a lot of venues like Holiday Inns and Roadway Inns that bands played in. So we were able to get through this agency, but in order to do that, we had to do these things that you're talking about. And, coming from Guam, you're always going to get some of those people who say, nah, Nate, I'm not going to do that,
Yeah.
But in order to be successful, sometimes you just have to surrender yourselves and trust. Mm-hmm. It's really all about trust every time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, back to Tunkot Mendiola. He is a really, really good friend of my stepdad. And every time, during our episode 1, I had talked about buying my first guitar, my first legit guitar on a baseball trip. It was with him. He took me to the guitar shop, Tunkot Mendiola, and every time I'm in Hawaii, I'll give him a call. Recently, he's been butt dialing me on WhatsApp. So right now, I talk to him about once a week accidentally.
Oh, really? Once a week?
Yeah, yeah, it's so funny. But amazing guitar player, amazing person.
Amazing person.
Yep.
He was really the key to keeping the Casuals together and making sure that he dealt with everyone's eccentricities so that it doesn't get out of hand, It was tough being a band leader. He always told, man, Pat, I don't know. And he always would say that he felt that it was holding him back as far as getting into the music and doing the parts that he needed to do just because he had to take care of all of this.
Yeah.
But, that's being a leader, man. You have to, these are all the things that you want to do, to keep whatever you're leading together. Mm-hmm. And he really took that seriously and really was a great band leader.
Yeah.
But I saw all the stresses too he had to go to.
And that's why I wanted to ask that question of being an MD and being in the moment, but also taking care of your bandmates, because from my experience of playing in a band with Kiko, I see all the different responsibilities he has to take care of in terms of even talking to people, making sure our stage is set. And at least for me, coming from a bandmate, I'm grateful for people like you guys and people like Uncle Cole, because I was able to just pay attention to the music for me, and I was able to flourish and develop my own vocal growth, because Kiko was able to take care of all those things, the extra things.
Yeah, it takes a special quality of a person to do that. I was lucky being a musical director because I didn't have to deal with that thing that Cole had to deal with as a leader. You had to take care of all the other elements. You had to make sure that, I kind of like to use this word, that no one's going to bring too much emotional debris to the rehearsal and to the performance. And just have a fine way of just keeping everybody in tune with each other. That's the only way you can do a good wholehearted performance, is that everyone has to kind of like be synced in sync with each other, spiritually even.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break from the Dream State podcast. If you don't see this behind me, we got Island Feels in the Hills, brought to you by Clutch Music, featuring The Green, the Ohana, the Boys. They're coming to Guam January 18th. Tickets are live now at clutchmusic.com. Please buy some tickets, support the fam. Also, it's going to be a great show, so you might as well show up. Let's go.
Yeah.
We were at the Casuals. We just finished talking about the Casuals. Now we're going to talk about, we wanted to bring up trade wins.
Yeah, your group trade wins.
Yeah, your group trade wins now.
With Shannon McManus, John Glacier, Andrew Gumatautau. And this band, this group, they're on the younger side of the generation for music, and that's also proof of your adaptability and your openness of the changes of music and what the changes it makes throughout time. So what does this group mean to you, and how did it start?
Wow. Okay. Well, like a lot of other groups that I've been involved with in these generation of musicians, House of Brutus was where I first met Shannon McManus. At that time, I was having 2 jobs. One was as a caregiver. I would travel with Mr. Calvo and kind of his, not so much a caregiver, but personal care assistant.
Okay.
He took me to 2 Super Bowls. And so at that time, I would always have somebody fill in for me. But they were having this jazz diva contest at the time. If you were around at that time, you'd probably win one whole year to sing with my group, because I think it was called The Late Show with Patrick Palomo. And this went on for about 10 years. I had the Friday night slot.
Oh my God.
And what I did was avail myself to Cause Endo's creative ideas of how to work it. And, I loved the place. House of Brutus had, multi-platforms and wood. So the music there had a certain vibration that just really was just so beautiful to play in. So I think I met Shannon even before that, because I heard her singing once with her former mentor, who unfortunately passed away. I think it was John Kinsella. And then I just so admired the quality and the clarity. She has this certain clearness of her voice.
Yeah.
And she has the smoothest voice around.
Yes. And Shannon, she doesn't have to be belting or singing loud, but I could spot her voice just from its clarity, from afar. So what happened is there was a whole time when, these different people, Crystal Paco won the first Jazz Diva. But what I was doing was I was working with the singers, but I told Kaz I didn't want to be involved in who you choose or what. I don't want to have that kind of pressure and feel, I want to just see what I could do. And what I was trying to do was recognize certain qualities that would help them bring out what they're trying to compete with.
Yeah.
But as soon as I heard Shannon sing, I knew that she'd probably win this. Well, what happened, I had to go on a trip with Jerry Calvo, and I think that's the first Super Bowl that Tom Brady won in New Orleans. And somebody else had to come and play with me, but they had to keep the contest going every Friday. So there's all these other singers like Christine Palma, the other Christine, I can't remember her last name, Matanani.
Yeah.
There was a bunch. And,
Yeah.
I kind of I went because my friend Jerry Calvin really told me that he really wanted me to go with him. So I would go and then get somebody else to play with me. And then was during that period, because even Shannon was one of the contestants, she pulled out. And I remember having a conversation with Jude Cruz with our band, Fried Bananas, I think was still called Fried Bananas there.
Mm-hmm.
And, this is one of the most promising groups again. The members in that band, I mean, Chris Tidinko and then Marca Clovea. And there was even a short stint when Freddie played with us there at House of Brutus. And then eventually it became Madmen and a Lady. I'm jumping already. But with Shannon, I just kind of knew, I had a feeling. And then Jude and I had this conversation. And this is probably the first time I'm going to say it out in public. We kind of know that she's really has everything it takes. But what happened is when I went on that trip, she pulled out of the competition. Contest? And when I got back, I was still very happy working with everyone, Everyone had their own qualities and strengths. And so I was always, my job was to get together with the singers, see what songs, they wanted to sing, and then help kind of coach them, work through it. And with Crystal, she had a visual thing going. She was still very gorgeous to look at. And I told her that she's so smart. So I said, maybe you should do a song and then sing it. I was the one who told her to sing. I think the song that won her that was Girl from Ipanema. But I told her to learn it in Portuguese. The original version, in Brazil, they used the Portuguese language. And that was one of the things that gave her, but I didn't have a pick. Thank God. It was Cause and some committee of his that chose who won, and they also went with the crowd support and how everyone was reacting.
So was it like one night, the contest, they perform and they announced the winner the same night?
Yeah, I think it went on for several weeks or something. And then that's when there was a breakdown and who ended up being picked. But going back to Shannon now, we already found this musical connection because, I dare say that, there's a lot of artists that you somehow just find a way to communicate in a sublime level. And she's one of those rare singers and artists that I feel that way. It's like we're almost reading each other's minds. When we went into the studio to record my Hinengi album and the Kulot Minahalang album, I totally told those guys to go, hey, we're using my name, or the name of our band is Trade Winds. By the way, it started out as The Refuge. I was the one who used that name with Nate. Nate Titano was in the group too. And this was before he left. And then they actually got a group together and kind of named it after me, Palomo, with Nate and Shannon and John when they went to the States for a short stint.
Oh, I didn't know that.
They were in Seattle, no? Or they were in LA?
They were in LA.
LA.
But it didn't, and then John and Shannon came back. But I'm jumping all over the place. But just going back to the quality that Shannon brings, and then John is one of those guys that's kind of quiet but very, very knowledgeable musically. He's kind of like, I could probably say he's kind of introverted, but he's a real genius.
Yeah, he's great.
I recognized that right away. And then he was into what we were doing, and I also met Andrew through them because one time Shannon came and said, hey, Uncle Pat, there's this guy, Andrew, man, you should hear him. And then I listened to a recording that he did because he did some production with Jason, what's the name of the keyboard player?
Jason Burkhart.
Yes, Jason Burkhart, and he did record because Andrew really is a prolific writer, and he likes writing in CHamoru too. And his stuff is really beautiful. And he had this unique kind of voice. Yeah. I remember other singers, I could hear people saying, oh man, he doesn't really have, he should try and sing louder and all that. But, I was already keen and onto it doesn't have to be that you sing so loud. It depends on how you express your note and how it comes out. So that's where then Andrew used to hang out with Shannon and John, and then we found that we had a chemistry going. And then TJ Hubert also became part of our group. Already at that point, we finished our stint at Brutus. Then we ended up bringing our band, The Refuge, which eventually turned into Trade Winds. It was those guys' idea to change the name when they came back from the States, when they had that short stint with Nate Taitanu and Shannon and John. Yeah. And I thought it was a cool name because that's the name of the bar that my grandmother owned way back when in Barragata.
Oh my gosh.
Trade Winds.
Yes. Wow. And so it kind of morphed from The Refuge to Trade Winds. And we were playing at Mermaid tavern then at that time. That was our Friday night gig thing.
Yeah.
And so the chemistry we had, it was easy to go into the studio. And then I don't mention him enough. He's just a very quiet guy. But Eddie Joe was the guy who literally produced all my records.
Oh, wow.
Except maybe the Conversations and Monologues one. I did it with that other producer that co-produced with him as a project because he ran the music program at Los Madonna's College. And they taught recording and engineering there. So I was lucky to be involved in a class project, but yet still able to do that record. They had all the facilities at the school.
Yeah.
But going back to that group, Trade Winds, when we went to the studio to record, we found a place for 2 months, and then we had to bring a piano in there. So my late pari, Paul Shimizu, let us use his upright Kawai piano. It's still up at his house. He had the movers bring it over to the studio, and we were there for, I think, probably a month, maybe 2 months. Wow. And was that Randy Atento and Ed worked on it, and we just set up something. And a lot of what we recorded for both records, it was there, was in studio live. We didn't discuss much about where the music was going to go. We just went mostly with vibe. And at that time, this is really important, everyone was going through some death in the family thing to deal with or something. And I told everybody, I go, just kind of bring all that emotion to the studio and harness it and make that be the part of the music that we're trying to come up with. And then I feel like just from that, and I'm huge in lament. I talk about it, I think, in my documentary. Mm-hmm. It has to do with, like, when you go through pain and suffering in your life, everyone has these ups and downs. If you can channel that into music or write, it makes people write or whatever, this melancholy attitude, it can become such a beautiful thing. And so we were able to come together and have these magical moments. Some of those takes are only 1 or 2 takes.
Wow.
It's a good time to plug that short form doc by Mighty Island. And
yeah, shout out to Mighty Island.
Yeah,
man, those guys did a masterful job.
Yeah.
They just won on first place in the New York Film Festival last week.
Crazy.
Wow. See,
as far as short doc series for Pacific Islanders. So.
It's inspiring. It's tear jerking. It's
beautiful.
It's a whole journey in 22 minutes. It's amazing. We'll leave the link for that in the description for this one.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was.
But I wanted to talk about that chemistry, and basically that's what kind of brought us together, and we were able to capture some of that. And what I did was I always am trying to be gracious, because really that's been kind of like my MO as far as being an artist, is I want, in order for me to feel uplifted about what I'm doing, I want everyone else around me to lift themselves up, and then I kind of like get inspired by that, and it lifts me up. And it worked in the studio. I told those guys, dude, bring your songs. Let's do your stuff. And, it was kind of like, there's a couple of things that happened. I really wanted to do something with Santino, who was here for a short while, and Dave Santos.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I gave the wrong direction, and the time that he had a chance to come to the studio, we probably could have done a song or two. He ended up getting lost, and then Dave Santos was able to, in my Hinengi album, we did a remake of my song Nights in San Jose, which is the first song in my Looping Sunset album. And that one I had really key musicians from the Bay Area, established people, and, top notch. I was very lucky. And we were able to do that, and Dave played congas. I think that was a one-taker.
Wow.
So all of your recordings that you do for let's say the Trade Winds album or even your solo albums, do you guys record live? Do you like to do that?
Yes, it's always in studio live.
Nice.
And I can't help but hearken that Evolution CD, because there was almost 30 musicians, and I was so happy. I always want everyone involved, And I'll tell you, man, the longest song, we call it the Joy Suite in that album. What magic. It was literally a one-taker. We only had enough time to just do the song once and see where it goes. And it was long. That's why we call it the Joy Suite. There was 3 parts to it. And I have to acknowledge, everyone knows the likes of Vince Mesa, Mike Hartendorp. I think Mark Heclavea played that He was one of the drummers we used.
Shout out to Vince Mesa in the audience tonight.
Vince Mesa, he's here.
So, you know, that song, everyone, and you know what? I actually started that. And I'll still give the guy credit, you know. Mike Hartendorp I told him, I said, why don't you put in a Rhodes intro and just do what comes to you? And he said it perfectly. Wow. You know, he kind of like he set the narrative for where the song was going to go.
Yeah.
And, you know, it just turned out beautifully because of that. You know, one taker, I mean, those are magical moments. And I've been very blessed to experience that, you know.
Yeah.
What's the name of that track?
The Joy Suite.
The Joy Suite.
And it was
Suite.
2 disc set, and then I got to do songs with my
It's going to be right here, guys.
Bias.
Right here.
Yeah. And then also like...
Oh, right here. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
And going back to like you like to record live, I wanted to go back to the Mighty Island Doc Trade Winds. Yes. I wanted to tell you that for the final shot, I teared. I couldn't help but tear.
We did My Sumai.
My Sumai. And I remember thinking like I was just watching you and I could feel you. It felt so raw.
You know, that day when we did that track, and you know, anyone who knows Shannon, that's why Shannon, no matter what, I'm always going to be understanding and embracing of whatever she brings, because she has that very high level, but she came in literally crying. She's very emotional like me.
Yeah.
We cry a lot. But she told me, she goes, Uncle Pat, I really wasn't going to come today because I didn't feel like I could give it what you deserve as far as this. And I go, no, man, she was really feeling it that day.
All of you.
And it was weird because we had to deal with just recording was during the pandemic. And then the other thing was Tony and Nahi had to really work with the piano because I was kind of bummed because they had 2 good grand pianos at university and they gave us the dud.
Aww.
But it's okay. I found a way to live with it.
Yeah.
And then in that shot, there was an upright that was brought in that Ed found. And you know, Ed, Joe, anyone who knows him, Vince knows how Ed's ear is so keen. I think that guy in a recording session, he'll hear a plane coming around like almost a whole minute before everybody, we have to stop. Plane coming. And everyone's what? He just has that keen ear. Yeah. Like whenever he mics the piano, whenever I do a live piano recording, he'll go, Prim, just play fun so I can find where the sweet spot is. We start doing these things where something's wrong with this guy, you know, the way but he kind of knows where he wants to put the mic.
Yeah. And
you know, people are good at these things, you know. Mm-hmm. And I've always been trusting about that. But I'm talking about chemistry, and that was with my band Trade Winds.
Yeah.
And then we were able to do the follow-up record, Kalot Minahaling. That was very emotional too. Yeah. That's where My Sumai is in.
Yeah. So why did you guys choose My Sumai to close out the doc?
It just felt right. And, you know, we let Mighty Island, you know, call a lot of what they wanted. I just said, man, some of the things I was doing, I go, no one else is going to do this. Like walking into the ocean, trying to walk in slow motion, you know. But, you know, I knew, and you know what, let me tell a story about those guys, Kyle and Nico. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I met them at the museum when I was doing a gig with Andrew about a year or a couple of years before that, and they were studying filmmaking, I guess, in the States. And they were just standing there, and I saw these 2 guys over their phone, and he goes, hey, do you mind if we record you a little through the phone? I go, not at all. Then after I took a break, we introduced each other, and I actually told them, I said, hey, maybe you guys would be the ones someday to kind of like document what I'm doing musically. And it was at the museum. Wow. And so they even forgot about that. I had to remind them when we did the premiere this past March to kick off CHamoru month. I said, do you remember how we first discussed about doing something? And look at how it's come full circle.
Yeah.
So, you know, all these magical elements just really had me believing and then just trusting that everything will work out. And, you know, man, what a spirited, talented artist we have here. I mean, look, I'm amongst you guys. Wow. Anyone my age would, hey, it makes you forget how old you are.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
So maybe, because I thought that dog was so beautiful and it captured you so beautifully. I felt you in every shot. I could feel you and just like your love for music, your love for the island, your love for the community.
And, Sumai is how we're related. My grandfather came from Santa Rita, Agate, that area. That was Sumai.
Yeah.
And, I felt all of that. And that song really describes that. If I'm not mistaken, I think it may have been John that wrote most of that song.
My Sumai?
Yeah, and I only learned it like a couple of days before the recording. It was a new song.
Oh, wow.
Before we recorded it in the Kolot Minahalang album.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be able to tell. You wouldn't be able to tell.
Well, everything just worked out perfectly. And that's one thing about trusting what's around you and just letting yourself go and just believing, magical things really do happen. I see it happening with you guys, with the music. And honestly, you cannot be, can't be happier about these things, just to see it come, to come into fruition that way.
Back to that last shot we were talking about where you're, like you said, slow motion through the water. We know you're not used to going slow motion through the water. You're right before cancer and after cancer. We know you would always talk about, your exercise is swimming. You would swim from where to where?
I would go, okay, you guys are going to be surprised, but who saw my routine? Because remember Miria after rehearsal, Miria Paredo? She lived in Piti, just 2 houses away from me. So one time I gave her a ride home and I would tell her about how I needed to go and work out and do this whole thing. So she goes, hey, Uncle Pat, can I just go and see what you do? It's really odd because I kind of made up my own yoga stuff, stretching and doing this routine where I would walk first barefoot in the sand just to get, there's a lot of healing elements too from the ocean. And so, the older you get, you got to start moving a little slower. But I felt that all of those things had to do with getting myself in just the right physical, spiritual, mental state of mind to play. Because whenever we play, or even just at a performance in a club, I always want to make it special and in the optimal way.
Yeah.
And so I'd go through this routine, like you see in the video, walking, and then I go to the other side. The other thing I would do is I'll take a little break, and I like to mix a fruit like guana, mango, and sativa. And it kind of like boosts my energy.
Yeah.
And then I'll go and do my sit-up and my yoga stretch routine, and then I'll end it up with a swim, and I have all these isometric exercises I designed for myself in the water. And it's going towards PD channel. Sometimes if I have the extra time and energy, I'll go swim into it a little.
Obviously, that is going to help with your health and.
That's why I think I was able to go through all of this and still have enough to get myself to this point now where look at what I'm doing. I'm sharing these things with you guys.
How do you think it helps with your music? Do you think it helps with your artistry and just you sitting on a piano and maybe feeling that key a little extra more?
Totally. It does. For me, it's all integrated, and it may work differently with some people, but I'll go ahead and talk about, how I go through my routines, because if anything, the best way to show appreciation and to thank, God for everything you're able to do is to inspire younger people and give it back. Mm-hmm. And then that way you keep emboldening yourself, and it keeps you giving you the energy. My favorite piano player right now is in her mid-80s. Her name is Martha Argerich. I always pray to God that I can play classical music in my next lifetime.
Yeah.
But she's still at the top of her game. And I look at someone like her, and it gives someone like me, I'm young compared to her. I'm only going to turn 70 in March. She's already in her mid-80s.
Yeah.
And she's still doing all these flawless things. And that's the point you try to reach as an artist, if you want to really be at one with your instrument. I see you with your playing. My goodness.
Yeah.
It's just so beautiful. And you're singing. You try and keep improving on it. And then that will help you just keep wanting to get better. And that's the beautiful thing about what we do. You cannot put a price or anything on it, but the fact that you can grow with that and expand yourself as an artist,
Yeah.
That's I think where the rewards come in, your hard work.
For sure. Uncle Pat, I'm in a stage of my life where I feel like I have so much to say, but I don't know how to express it. I don't know how to approach it. What advice would you give to artists like me who want to share their voice through creation genuinely and effectively?
Well, my advice is that, you have routines, and then, for instance, like in music, they have all these rules and concepts, right?
Yeah.
But you want to get into your creative thing, break all the rules.
Break them all.
Break all the rules.
Pretty much, because then you give yourself that extra space to reinvent yourself and add more to what you already have. And, it's just natural that everyone comes to a point where there's just so much you want to do. But then you feel almost like, we go through things in our life. Sometimes we feel stagnated. But that feeling is just something in you that's telling you that you just really want to do this really well. And you just keep that as your focus, and you eventually get there.
Yeah.
And, keep taking care of your voice. That's the thing.
Yeah. It's so crucial. Because as singers, I know we talked about this in episode 1. I mentioned with Kiko, sometimes with instrumentalists, they could just show up to the gig, probably woke up 5 minutes before the gig and showed up, and that's it. But vocalists, we need rest. We need water. We need to hydrate.
Do I know that, yes.
Yeah.
I took 7 years of voice training, mostly because I was arranging vocals for the casuals. Mm-hmm. I would write 6-part harmonies. That I wanted to understand everything about the vocal. And by doing that, my voice teacher was able to expand my range practically 4 octaves. Wow. I don't have the high end like I used to have, but I use myself as a utility person to go with the harmony that I arranged where my voice is needed.
Yeah.
But then, it helps you understand vocal quality and everything. But the one thing I learned about singing is that you need to rest.
It's crucial.
You need to get your sleep.
Yeah, you just cannot skip it. You can't skip it at all.
That's part of, the responsibility. And I remember meeting this, I remember her name. Her name was Wadi Kaina in Maui. Mm-hmm. She had the most gorgeous voice, and she had a group called Hawaiian Expressions in the hotel next to us. I used to go there after our gig with the casuals, and listen to her band. They played Hawaiian music, and, the Pahinui brothers that were known for slack key. There's a couple of, man, I can tell I'm dated, but I would go listen to her, man, and I was almost melting at how she sang,
Yeah.
And after the gig, I got to be friends because I couldn't help but go up and say, hey, man, I really enjoyed it. And then I go, man, what's your secret? Do you warm up and do this? Hawaiians, they don't think about warming up. They can eat a lot of poi and still sing.
They're born warm. Warm.
But she told me, lots of sleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kiko can attest to this, because before every gig here in Guam, I always like to take a nap. I always have to take a nap because I know later throughout the day, it's just going to help me just keep warm the entire night. Singing three hours. Of course, we have breaks in between, but I figured out maybe 2 years ago where I'm I think I need this nap. I definitely need this nap.
And once you start understanding how your physical nature, because everyone's different.
Yeah.
And then find that technique that it would work for you. See, everyone who's successful, and I learned them from one of my biggest mentors, my voice teacher. She was also the manager of the casual. She's in her 90s. But she told me that you have to develop a technique to, keep doing what you're doing and improving on it. Mm-hmm. Incidentally, I need to share this with you. Please. She called me up a few weeks ago. It was 3 or 4 in the morning. Patrick, Eunice, I have her in my call. I never even forgot her phone number.
Yeah.
And she goes, I just felt like calling you because I really miss you. And she's been wanting me to go visit with her. And then while I was talking to her, she goes, you know what? I can tell you're not doing your voice warm-ups every day. Ooh. Because your voice got lower.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, being that teacher and somebody you super look up to, right? I said, there's her way of, letting me know that. And, since that conversation, I've been trying to just sing a little more.
Yeah.
I feel like there's some things I could do with the group. And
who are some of your favorite singers or vocal inspirations? You.
Me?
Yeah, some of your favorite singers.
Locally or just
all over?
All over.
Anybody, any
my
time,
God.
any.
There's
I would love to know
any
any genre,
any era, any genre.
Ella Fitzgerald.
Ella Fitzgerald.
Sarah Vaughan. I listen to jazz singers, but also classical singers, opera singers. Maria Callas. I saw a movie on her. She's from Italy.
Oh, wow.
And she was this lady that didn't have a frame that normally classical singers, they have all that body to use as their part of their resonance. When you sing.
Yeah.
When you sing at your optimum, you're using every part of your body. They become the resonator and it vibrates. Mm-hmm. And then just Stevie Wonder, not only as a singer, but also as a composer, he has a huge influence in me.
Yeah.
So there's many.
Yeah.
Johnny Sablon, just because of the kind of music he was doing, it has a lot to do with how I've been writing and how I want to do, tap into that CHamoru element of what I do musically.
Yeah. Beautiful.
But there's many. You.
Me?
Yeah, every time I hear you sing and I hear what's that?
2 Sundays ago.
Sundays you sang Hagu in the key of A.
Yeah.
It was perfect. Even Donovan goes, wow, man, she did.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But I just keep hearing the evolvement and the improvement,
Yeah. Thank you. Some of my vocal inspirations, there's this girl named Yeba. She's like this white girl from, I think, Wisconsin or something, but maybe I'll send you some of her videos. I love
There's
Yeba.
so many.
You would love
There's
it.
so many.
You
would love
her.
Yeba. Yeah. There's also just classically trained. Her name is Cynthia Erivo. She started on the Broadway scene, and now she's about to star in the new Wicked movie.
Wow.
But yeah, Cynthia Erivo, I love her too.
What's the movie she was in? Harriet Tubman. The movie about Harriet Tubman. She was the lead role.
She also did Aretha Franklin in a limited series, and she also talked about what she had to learn because in the Aretha Franklin limited series, she sang everything. It wasn't where like they shot the band and then it's just overdubbed with Aretha Franklin. She had to learn how to sing just like Aretha Franklin and the emotion. Wow. Yeah. I forgot where I watched it, but I think you would really enjoy watching that too.
I probably would. And then there's a name you just invoked, Aretha Franklin. She's always been, there's many, I grew up listening. And
yeah. I know you mentioned, how about, what have you been obsessed listening to? Any music
Jacob
or group?
Collier.
Ooh.
I'm Uncle Pat. I am like all over Jesse Volume 4, the entire album. Have you listened to it? The most recent.
I don't have time to listen to all the stuff, but man, I've been on to this guy, and I have to say, the first guy to tell me about him was T.J. Hubert. Because Uncle Pat, you should listen to this guy. When I checked him out, I said, wow. And there's certain things he talks about, quarter tones and the way he voices his harmony.
Yeah.
And these are things, honestly, to be honest with you, I thought about these things before. I wonder if there's a way to do this. And so he's just one of those new guys, just so progressive, a true genius, And for someone as young as him and influencing someone like me who's lived for, I could be like a Dracula of music, it's like...
Jacob Collier is like a fusion of you, someone who knows the musical, like what you want to hear, plus someone who like has studied how to maneuver musical software, like
see that's
perfectly.
The thing.
He's a fusion of both, and I promise you, I'm gonna set up. There's this thing he does when he plays Bridge Over Troubled Water live.
I've heard some of his arrangements
because
he doesn't do all the same things, but he chooses songs and then
he routes his vocals through. It's traditionally you'd think it's like a vocoder, but he's playing all of his parts through his MIDI keyboard. So he's playing all the notes through a keyboard, but he's voicing everything, but not like an actual vocoder. It's similar, but there's more inflections and there's more nuance to it. And I'm gonna set it up in my studio, and I'm gonna bring you in, and we're gonna try it out.
Okay.
Let's do it. It's gonna be amazing.
Fun.
Yeah.
Jacob Collier. That's the one thing I recognized when I started. In fact, when the pandemic took over and we had to go into Google Classroom, I assigned my students to listen to the Stevie Wonder song. He arranged it, and his vocal arrangements was just off the charts, man. I said, wow. Don't you worry about a thing.
Yep.
And then I discovered these other songs. And, some of these students are now middle school that I, was teaching through, Google Classroom. I was lucky because I had Sophia, Israel, and Jericho, who was dating her at the
Shout out
time.
Jericho.
Yeah.
Shout out to you guys.
Always covering me when I'm I'm out with Maoli. He is my cover
my cover.
for KPV and the
He is
homies.
great.
And
But see, Jericho, they spoiled me because then I didn't learn how to do this. They did it all for me.
Yeah.
And so when it came time for me to start doing stuff through Moodle, and then, you have to put your grades in RenWeb. Last year when they gave me a homework, I paid money to somebody who knows how to do that because I'm kind of an illiterate when it comes to these devices.
Yeah.
But then, as I was actually already assigning because when I heard his stuff and then I heard how he was voicing his harmonies, and he used a lot of Stevie Wonder songs because Stevie Wonder wrote that kind of music.
Yeah.
I was saying, wow, it's nice to be still alive and see music come to this.
Yep.
there's this one song from Jacob Collier's newest album that literally gets me through. It started on the first really long tour I did with Maoli. It's called Wherever I Go. The album came out right before I went on tour. It was a 2-month tour, straight 42 shows for over 2 months. And I was gone because we had rehearsals before. And then, transit back to Guam is kind of not easy. So I was gone for 2.5 months, really. But this song I would listen to every single day.
Jacob Collier.
Featuring Michael McDonald and Lawrence the Band, which they're a brother-sister duo. Yeah. They remind me a lot of Kaylee and I. Yeah. We're not brother and sister, but they have the chemistry we have the chemistry of siblings. We spend all the time together, so it's like that. And
that's beautiful.
Man, we're gonna play it right after this pod.
Yeah,
but that's so amazing you brought that up.
And so he has this one song that I like, and I asked my group to learn it. The little trio I have with Donovan and Crystal, because I really like the song "Little Blue." And so what I did is, first to fifth grade kids, man, can you just imagine, what calms them down? I play that song for them.
It's a beautiful
they seem enamored, and now they're singing it.
Little blue, be my shelter.
Yeah.
My da, da, na,
Yeah.
Oh,
you should totally just listen to the whole album, Uncle Pat, because it's so good. It's a fusion of everything.
And his previous stuff, it wasn't it's not that it wasn't appealing to mass audiences, but it just didn't hit. This Volume 4, Jesse Volume 4, it is
I will check it out. It's just that I'm so busy. I've never been busier in my life, but I want to go back to that Little Blue because I said, if my bosses at Mount Carmel found out that this is what I'm doing in my conversational CHamoru class, they're going to, you're supposed to be teaching conversation. You know what I did? I translated that first verse into CHamoru, and I'm making them memorize it.
Really? Can you send that to me?
Let's do it.
Can you send that to me?
Let's do it.
I'm trying to make it real CHamoru, but yet the music still, because that's how universal. And Jacob Collier, man. Yeah, so.
He's a virtuoso. And it's so rare you see those, it's so rare you see the, what's the word I'm looking for? Prodigy. It's so rare you see a prodigy, the young ones, that actually, when they get older, it translates into actual, making music that people like to listen to. Yeah. But he's one of those guys where when he was young, he was a prodigy, and now he's still relevant. He's still making all the really amazing music.
Playing everything.
Playing everything, collaborating with the best. On this album, he worked with Kirk Franklin.
He worked with everyone on this album.
Because he can.
Because he can.
It's kind of weird to see this guy, the genius that he is, and then it always seems like he's wearing pajamas.
We were just talking about this.
Yeah.
Lana, boy, get some shoes, Leo. Grandma will buy you shoes if you need shoes,
and it's always
boy.
crazy patterns too, funky patterns.
These
sapatos
people, they'll be eccentric in some ways. And
yeah.
Toza sapatos niya si Jacob. Rana, Jacob.
But his range is really good too, and he has that sound and placement. I just was going through. I was telling Kaylee that my friend from FD, my brothers, we already celebrated our 50th year last year since we graduated. But he told me, you know, Pat, you're what you call a stalker. So I saw this thing. Oi, I know the song. Jacob Collier was singing Georgia in My Mind, playing just piano and singing it. And I said, oh my God, this guy always has something that knocks me off my feet. I mean, you hear all this intricate stuff he does, the harmonic things, but this one he's just using. He was like, you know what made me press the X so I could hear it's going in I go scroll through Facebook, because he was really banging on the piano and he was playing one point of the song and very dynamically, and then he brought that dynamics down and he was able to use all these vocal lines. I was just like, whoa.
Yeah. He is whoa.
He is wow. Yeah, he's whoa. He's wow. Yeah, and you know what? He would be really happy to meet you and to hear you play and to jam with you.
You think so?
I promise you.
No, for real.
I promise you. You're
easy.
I want to tell
especially
him
because
that
he's into like you're an inspiration to all the young kids. You're an inspiration to all of us who are in the middle of that, who are the older people. You're like, yeah, and his music, you guys' music would really mesh well together.
Well, you know, it's funny because I used to come up with these things, even though if you hear the first song I really wrote, you think, wow, is that really it? And I used to think, I'm just going to keep this to myself because it's kind of like too far out there. But then this guy comes around and makes me feel better about what I was thinking and where my mind was trying to go into, but I stopped myself because I think this is just a little bit too crazy. You know, they're gonna think something's wrong with this guy, and then I'm hearing this guy just apply all these things and go and talk about it.
Yeah.
Harder tones. Oh my God.
You know,
and
we've
then
gotten
the technical stuff that you're talking about now. That's something I can't do.
That's what we're gonna work that out. I'm gonna be the other side. You know, Jacob Collier is a mix of both. How about two guys that are? I'm into like the technical side. You have the musical side. We'll figure out how to get there. But we've gone through the beginnings. We've gone through like, you know, where you are now, who you know, the kind of inspiration you get, how you give everyone inspiration. And I think it's a really good way to end the podcast today.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for all you do for the island, all you do for the youth, all you've done for the previous generations, for the generations now, for the people that want to reach for the stars, and for the people that want to beat cancer. Like, for everybody, really.
For everybody, yeah.
Thank you so much, Uncle Pat. We really love to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Ben Probitsu, you know, I mean, I just really, to me, the rewards comes in just seeing these things that you guys are doing flourish, and to know that I may have inspired you or had a little, you know, bit of thing here and there to help nurture you and be your cheerleader and to push you on, because I recognize this thing, it's very meaningful to me and inspiring and kind of like still emboldening me to keep going at it, because one thing with the thing we're doing now, it's real magic. I mean, you know, it's a universal language and stuff. Let's tap into it more, you know.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for just being a light.
Thank you so much.
We love you.
We love you. Si Diyos masi, dan guaito. Patrick Palomo, everybody. We'll see you guys on the next episode, Dream State Podcast. Yes, sir.